Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to the Leading Voices from Israel. I'm Rabbi Goodman, and today we are in for a treat. We have such an incredible conversation planned for you by another powerful Israeli woman. Before we begin, and I turn it over to Les Rothschild, the co-chair of the Israel Engagement Committee here at Holy Blossom, just a quick thank you to Shai Menuchin and Yonit Landskroner for their generous gift of sponsorship today, making this conversation possible. Shai also sits on the Israel Engagement Committee, and we appreciate all of the good work that both Shai and Yonit do around Holy Blossom and for the Jewish people, Big Adult. So I'm going to invite Les, I'll spotlight you, and he can set the frame and introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Rabbi, and welcome, Orly. It's great to have somebody, have you here and talk a little bit about it. And Orly's bio is on the website, and the description of Iraq is on the website. And I'm going to leave the description of Iraq for Orly to do for those of you who don't know what the organization is and the important organization that it is. But just very briefly about Orly, and one thing we learned this morning that I just learned about 5 minutes ago is that she's Canadian, and she was born in Ottawa and spent the first year of her life in Ottawa, and so she is even more welcome now, being a Canadian. She's a graduate of the Faculty of Law of Tel Aviv University and of the law school at Columbia University, and she's a member of the Bar of Israel and New York. And she's been working at the Israel Religious Action Center since 2004 as the director of the legal department. And in between 2014 and 2021, she was the director. In that capacity, she led all kinds of battles that you'll hear about, all the legal battles that she's been involved with in so many areas that the Religious Action Center is working on. You'll hear all about that today, so I'm not going to go through that. But as of last November, she stepped in and became the director of Iraq, of the Religious Action Center. She's also a member of the Reform Congregation Mevaseret Zion, where she lives with her family, and she's on the board of the congregation there. Assume you're still on the board. That's what it says on your bio. So she's active not only as part of Iraq, but also in the reform movement in Israel as well. And it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome, Orly, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Good afternoon to you. It's almost evening here. And I want to share with you a presentation which starts with the Israel Declaration of Independence. We celebrated Independence Day here in Israel, Yom Ha'atzmaut, just a couple of days ago. And the paragraph that you see here from the Declaration of Independence from 1948 is one of the most important paragraphs, which really embodies the values that Iraq is trying to promote for the past 35 years. We are celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. And I want to give you through this paragraph and the values that are mentioned in it, some examples of the work we have been doing for the past years. So wait a minute, let's start just a minute. So the Israel Religious Action Center, we are the public and legal advocacy arm of the reform movement in Israel. And we deal with a variety of human rights, working to promote a set of values that you'll hear about soon. And we've been doing it, as I said, for the past 35 years. We work to promote tolerance, religious freedom, pride. We protect the rights of the LGBTQ community, equality on different, and fighting discrimination on various contexts. All of this stems from our Jewish values of inclusion. We protect Israel's democracy. We fight for gender equality and for racial justice. We work to mend Israel based on the concept of tikkun olam. We strive for a diverse society, a just society, and of course, pluralist society. So, let's start with talking about Jewish immigration. The state of Israel should be open to Jewish immigration, and we have been working to make this a reality, assisting converts, reform and conservative converts to get citizenship under the law of return. The law of return says that every Jew, including persons who were converted, are entitled to citizenship, automatic citizenship, and it took us a very long legal battle of over 30 years in order to include in this section also reform and conservative converts. This has reached its culmination last March of 2021, when the Supreme Court of Israel decided that reform and conservative converts, whether they're converted abroad or inside Israel, are eligible for citizenship under the law of return. We have since been assisting converts to actually materialize this decision. You can see here in the picture Erica. Unfortunately, although she was converted through the reform movement, the Ministry of Interior still does not, she did not receive a citizenship, and we're still representing here in the courts until all of our converts will receive citizenship according to the decision. So that's Erica. The state is also, of course, the home for the ingathering of all the exiles. And we have the Legal Aid Centers for Orly. Our LACO, Legal Aid Center for Orly, was established in 1992. We're celebrating again this year many years of helping Olim in their different struggles vis-a-vis the Ministry of Interior. The Legal Aid Center for Orly has helped over 100,000 Israelis since its inception until today. We're helping both converts, as I said before, Olim Chadashim, new immigrants. We are helping different groups on cases, humanitarian cases, such as victims of domestic violence, women who are not Israeli citizens, were married to abusive Israeli citizens and had to leave them because of the violence, and they're about to be deported from the state, and we were helping them stay here and receive a citizenship. We were helping different families, and recently we've helped the refugees both from the Ukraine and Russia who are trying to flee the war zone and come to Israel. And we have dozens of new cases in this regard each week. And here you can see in the picture Galina, who is actually one of our converts who very happily received citizenship. You can see here her Israeli passport, which she received just a couple of weeks ago. That's one face of person we helped through this Legal Aid Center. The state of Israel also should work to develop the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants, whether they're Jews or Arabs. And we have set up a racism crisis center 5 years ago in 2017. And this racism crisis center offers legal and mental health assistance to victims of racism, whether it's Arabs, Ethiopians, any group that was discriminated against on the basis of its group affiliation. And we have many people turning to us, and in the appropriate cases, we file legal proceedings and help them receive compensation if they were discriminated against, or help them in any other way. You can see here in the picture Anat Hoffman, who is the executive director of IRAC, and Samach Darwish, who is the lawyer who is leading our Racism Crisis Center. One of the most important values is, of course, equality, and the state has to ensure complete equality for people. And one of the groups that is discriminated against is the LGBTQ community. We have been helping them in many contexts. One of them is the Pride Parade here in Jerusalem. Each year, we are helping the Open House for Pride and Tolerance, which is the LGBTQ organization in Jerusalem, to receive permits from the police to make the municipality hang the pride flags, and each year it's another struggle, but it's happening every year, and it's going to happen again this coming June. Another issue of discrimination is the context of adoption. Under Israeli law, only heterosexual couples are allowed to adopt babies in Israel. And here in the picture, you can see Shai and Shachar. They're a gay couple with a daughter, Tanya, that they adopted when they lived in the States a couple of years ago. Now they live in Israel, and they want to adopt a sister or brother for Tanya, but they're not allowed to do so. So we had a few petitions already filed before the Supreme Court demanding to mend this discrimination. And this battle is still ongoing, but hopefully it will change soon. We are working to protect the social and political rights on all the residents of Israel. And in this regard, we fight racism on many fronts. We fight those who use race, who use Judaism to promote hostility and hate. And we help people receive their equal rights. And one of the examples is the residents of the unrecognized Bedouin villages in the Negev. You can see here the picture of a tour we had with other organizations which we cooperated with in the Negev. The residents in those villages are not connected to electricity, and they have very poor infrastructure, and they don't have ballots in the villages. So if they want to vote in the general elections, they have to travel very far. And that's why it's no surprise that the the voting rate there is very low, because unlike other Israelis, they don't have ballots where they can vote near their homes, and we are working to change the situation. Another very important battle that we led is demanding the disqualification of racist candidates from running to the parliament, from running to the Knesset. Under Israeli law, if you incite racism, you're not allowed to be a member of the parliament and be a member of the Knesset. But the law requires that you bring a very heavy load of evidence, a very, very strong evidence to show that you actually incite to racism and that you actually intend to implement it when you will be a member of the Knesset. And since 1992, when Meir Kahane of the Kach party was disqualified, nobody was disqualified because the Supreme Court said you didn't bring enough evidence. And we managed to do so in the two sets of election that were in 2019, 3 years ago. We managed to disqualify 3 racist candidates of the Jewish Strength Party, a racist party which is actually the followers of Meir Kahane. They believe that the Arabs should not be here and that they should be kicked out of the country, and that all of the Arabs are the enemies of Israel. And you can see here me talking before the General Election Committee. That was the first stage. Then I had to reach the Supreme Court. And happily, the Supreme Court accepted our petition, and it drew a clear line that racism is not allowed inside the Knesset, the parliament of the Jewish and Democratic State of Israel. We are working to fight discrimination on various grounds. And one of those is, of course, religious discrimination. In Israel, there is no separation between religion and state. And when we're talking about Judaism, Judaism is equated with orthodoxy in every respect. This is against the law because the law says that the state should treat all streams equally. But for each and every context, we have to fight and we have to take the case to court in order for the court to make the state act equally toward us. And you can see here the picture of 7 rabbis, Reform rabbis, from different regional councils in Israel, from the north to the south. And after a long legal struggle, the state has started to fund their salaries. And so we broke the Orthodox monopoly in the sense that religious services which are funded by the state are no longer only Orthodox. That was a very important decision. We fight, of course, also incitement to racism, as I mentioned before. You can see here a picture from a movie depicting the organization called Lehava. Lehava is an acronym for working against assimilation in the Holy Land. But this is actually an organization that uses violence against Arabs, against mixed couples of Jews and Arabs. And they also incite against the reform movement. And as you can see here from the movie, because we are leading the fight against them. We are leading the fight against the fact that they're taking Judaism to incite hatred, to incite violence. And after 3 petitions that we filed to the Supreme Court over the course of 10 years, finally, the Attorney General decided to indict the head of the organization, and he's now under criminal charges for incitement to racism and violence. And we are hoping that he will actually be that it will be successful, and we're working also to make sure that all the incitement that they are putting on different platforms, different digital platforms, is taken off. We're working vis-a-vis different platforms like Facebook and Twitter to call them to close the racist pages, because it's a very powerful tool to disseminate their incitement. Another thing that we're doing is making sure that rabbis who are part of the civil service in Israel, they're in a formal post, who use their post to incite against racism, against Arabs, against LGBTQ, against the reform movement, are undergoing disciplinary proceedings, because this is something that should not be allowed for someone who is part of the public service. And we've had a great victory in 2020 when the Supreme Court ordered the city rabbi of Safed in northern Israel, a rabbi who for many, many years incite against Arabs. The court said he should go disciplinary proceeding because those expressions should not be allowed as a rabbi who serves the state. Another very important struggle that we are dealing with for almost 20 years is fighting for gender equality and against gender segregation in the public sphere and exclusion of women. This is a trend that, a phenomenon that has started 25 years ago and have grown ever since. The ultra-Orthodox sector, or some parts of it, the leaders of the ultra-Orthodox sector, demand gender segregation on buses, on planes, on medical clinics, sometimes in the streets. And for many years, the state accepted those demands and pushed the women aside, made women board the buses from the back door, have different entrances to medical clinics, allow a radio station, a public radio station, to bar women from being heard in the station. And we led fights in all of those contexts. And happily, the state changed its attitude. And for a couple of years already, the Attorney General declared that all of those practices are illegal, because a democratic country should make sure that women have the same right to go in the public sphere like men do. And we still have many ongoing struggles. You can see here 2 examples of the struggle. You can see here the picture of a photo of Peggy Parnas. She's a 95-year-old Holocaust survivor living in Germany. And her photo was presented in an exhibition near the municipality of Jerusalem of Holocaust survivors. But since she's a woman, some people did not like the fact that her face are being shown in the streets of Jerusalem, and her face were sprayed upon several times. You can see here her niece Karen, who came every time to clean the picture and to send her aunt in Germany the picture of her face cleaned. And we filed a petition against the Jerusalem municipality for failing to act against this horrible phenomenon. And the judge accepted the petition and said that, of course, the municipality should treat this phenomenon severely. Another issue are modesty signs or graffitis calling for modest dress. Here it says you can pass here only if you dress modestly. And you can see here in the pictures 3 brave women, Miriam, Nili, and Eve, who live in Bet Shemesh. They are Orthodox women, and we cooperate with them. We represent them for over a decade now. At first, it was not easy for them, for Orthodox women, to be represented by the reform movement. But over the years, we have created a very strong bond, and we understood that we are together moderates fighting against the extremists, against the zealots. And it does not matter what our affiliation is. We have to work together against this. And in Bet Shemesh, which is a city sort of between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, there is a very large ultra-Orthodox population. And in major streets, we have huge modesty signs calling for women to go in modest dress when they walk in the streets. And in some cases, women, you can see here, they dressed pretty modestly, but it was not dressed modestly enough for some people, and they were attacked. Stones were thrown at them. They were cursed upon, spat upon. And we have had a series of victories in the courts. The court told the municipality that they have to take down the signs, which are humiliating, and of course for the police to make sure they catch those people. We've made some progress. There's still work to do, but we had very important declarations of the court that such modesty signs should not be allowed in major streets in Israel. I can tell you fresh news from the oven, a suit that we found that was published just today. I had an operation, a back operation a couple of months ago, and I had to go through physical therapy. I went to my clinic, 2 clinics in Jerusalem, and in the health clinics, all of the pictures were pictures depicting men and boys only. We wrote to the medical clinic and they told us we have to be sensitive to different parts of the population, and that's why we don't show women. And after a few years, we have been dealing with this for a few years now, and now I experienced it on a personal level, and I was so furious with it that I decided we're going to file a suit, and we filed a civil suit for damages, saying it's illegal and that the medical clinic should compensate me because I, as the client of the patient, was humiliated by the fact that women cannot be allowed to be seen in the medical clinic at all. And actually, my doctor just sent me a WhatsApp saying that she's so happy because I'm actually doing it on behalf of the female doctors that feel humiliated also by this fact. Freedom of religion. As I said, we have a discrimination on the various issues here in Israel. One of the issues is the issue of marriage. I know that Professor Ruth Halperin-Kedari gave a talk, so I'll just mention the fact that you know by now, of course, that there is no civil marriage in Israel, and that reform marriages in Israel are not recognized by the state. We held an event in the States called 3 Weddings and a Statement, calling for freedom of choice in marriage in Israel. This still hasn't happened. It requires to change the law, but we're working to make sure that the couples who marry through the reform movement and are not considered married couples, but rather common law couples, enjoy the same rights, that at least they would not be hurt by the fact that they chose to get married according to their belief. Another issue concerning freedom of religion is the issue of burial. In Israel, burial is conducted by ultra-Orthodox religious societies. And so again, people cannot say farewell to their loved ones according to their belief. And we are working both against illegal practices of ultra-Orthodox burial societies. For instance, in some ceremonies, funerals, women are not allowed to eulogize their loved ones, or the family is supposed to part, men and women cannot stand together. So we have some civil suits against the burial companies in this regard. And we're also working to advance the option of civil burial in Israel, which hardly exists today. And finally, holy places. The state should guard the holy places. And one of the most important, or the most important holy site in Israel is the Western Wall, the Kotel. The former government, the Netanyahu government, back in 2016, 6 years ago, decided on the Western Wall agreement. It was a compromise, a proper solution for the different sides. According to this agreement, the current egalitarian plaza, which is very small and unkept, and does not enjoy governmental budgets, should have been upgraded, been part of the wall. The agreement stated that the reform movement, together with the conservative movement and women of the wall, would have representatives in the council running the place. The agreement also said that it will be very clear that the rules of the prayer at this site is an egalitarian prayer. People could be praying together, but none of this happened. And today we still have the same place, which is not a real alternative. Many people don't know even that it exists. And we don't have any control on how it is operated. You can see here a march on Rosh Chodesh Adar at the beginning of March. when leaders of the Reform and the Reform and Conservative movements, both in Israel and abroad, were here, and we had a march of Torah scrolls, because currently the rabbi of the Kotel, he's an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, and he's running the segregated main plaza of the wall. He does not allow any Torah scrolls to be brought inside the Kotel. And of course, inside the Kotel, in the segregated plaza, only men are allowed to hold the Torah scroll. So we had this march in protest of the fact that there is no basically an opportunity or a possibility of an egalitarian plaza as part of the main plaza, or an egalitarian plaza that would create a real alternative. We had high hopes for advancing the Western Wall Agreement under this government. Unfortunately, this did not happen up until now. But we'll continue, of course, to protest. We also have a legal petition pending before the Supreme Court for many years now. And not only that, the small egalitarian plaza, we can see ultra-Orthodox people come inside the egalitarian plaza and put a mechitza, put a barrier there, and conduct a segregated prayer there. Not only do they have the main plaza, which is segregated, they're trying to take our small egalitarian plaza, which is just a poor alternative anyway. So we still have a lot to do in this regard. That's the presentation. And I wanted to tell you that first of all, IRAC is issuing a weekly newsletter. I'll post the link to sign up for a newsletter. If you don't receive it, I highly recommend that you sign up for the newsletter. Each week, we tell you about one of the cases we dealt with, or news in any of our cases. And another thing, this week we are holding our second crowdfunding event. We had one last year, and we're holding another one this week. So if those struggles are important for you, if the values of equality and freedom of religion are important for you, and you want to make Israel a better place, please support us. Les is one of our ambassadors, and I thank you for that, Les, very, very much. And he'll post soon the link to the campaign, so that you're more than welcome to support us and allow us to continue to do all the work that we've been doing, because as you've seen, we had a lot of victories, but we still have a lot of work ahead. So thank you, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you have.
Orly, thank you so much, both for your time today and for this very good work that you're doing on behalf of the Jewish people in Israel. There's a handful of good questions. Maybe I'll just, before we jump into the chat, I'll encourage everyone, if you have questions, to please write them in the chat, and we will ask them on your behalf. Hopefully we'll get to as many as we can. And Les, if you have that link, you could drop it in the chat, but we'll also make sure that we send that link in a follow-up email the next 24 hours or so. So if you're watching the recording, just note that we're talking about the deadline is Wednesday, May 11th. So hopefully you get to watch the recording ahead of time and can still make an impact. Thank you for posting the link there in the chat there, Les. And Orly posted the newsletter there. I'll include both those in this follow-up. Okay, so I'm going to take the questions in the order in which they came. This one comes from Ann Dublin. For the last few sessions, we've been hearing about the courageous fight that is going on in Israel against numerous issues, including gender, race, religious discrimination. Is there an umbrella organization in Israel that helps coordinate these many worthy causes?
Great question. So there are a variety of civil rights organizations in Israel. I can say that we have cooperation with many organizations. We have cooperation with organizations dealing with human rights, like the Rachman Center that you've heard, Professor Rutal Kadari. We have cooperation with organizations dealing with discrimination against Arabs, with organizations working to protect Israel's democracy. But I think that IRAC is very special in the sense that we have such a wide range of issues. We have, ACRI, the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, also deals with a wide variety of issues, but we are actually the only organization which is a religious organization, a Jewish organization, that takes upon itself to treat all those issues, to try to identify the different injustices in Israeli society, and to voice, a Jewish voice against them. So I think in a sense we are very unique. Of course, we work with cooperation with many other organizations because we believe it, in some cases it's important and of course makes us stronger.
Thank you. So similar thread. And I said I was going to go in order, but I'm not. Similar thread. Is there a similar social justice wing within other denominations, within the Orthodox community or conservative movement in Israel as well?
So the conservative movement didn't used to have, doesn't have a legal arm. We, in many of our cases, religious freedom and pluralism cases, we represent the conservative movement. They did set up a sort of advocacy arm, which works at the Knesset. So they've started to do some lobbying. I can say that we use the legal tool very heavily, but we also do public policy and advocacy in the Knesset and with different government ministries. So in the sense we have, like legally, we represented them for many, many years, and we still do. On the Orthodox side, there are some organizations like Kolech, which is an Orthodox feminist organization. However, they do not have their own legal department. So in some of the cases, we represented them. I mentioned the radio station that did not allow any women to be heard on air. We filed a class action suit on behalf of Kolech, of the Orthodox feminist organization, and we won the suit, and the radio station was ordered to pay 1 million shekels in damages, and also women were allowed to go on air. A very interesting phenomenon is the development of ultra-Orthodox feminist organizations. This is something that's a development of the last maybe 10 years. Very brave women that are going against exclusion of women in the ultra-Orthodox society. For instance, the fact that the ultra-Orthodox parties in the Knesset have only male members of the Knesset, and women are not allowed to be part of those parties. And they took it to the court, saying, first of all, they had a campaign called Lo Nivcharot, Lo Becharot. If we cannot be elected, we won't vote for those parties. And those are still, some voices in the ultra-Orthodox scene. It's very interesting to see that things are trying to evolve, but it's still in a very preliminary stage, but very, very important voices. And of course, we have good connections with them. The cooperation is usually not public because for them still to be, cooperating publicly with the reform movement is problematic, because in and of itself, the fact they're struggling within their society causes many people to put a lot of pressure on them. But we are in a very good connection. I just met two of them yesterday, and they're very brave women.
Wonderful. Could you comment on the current law about the burial of reformed female soldiers?
I didn't understand exactly the question.
Right. So
I can say that reforms, are, of course, if they're born here in Israeli citizens, and there's no problem. And if the question was about like reform converts, it could sometimes cause problems on the issue of burial. But when we're talking about a soldier, anyway, it's not conducted by an ultra-Orthodox burial society, but it's conducted by the army. We have military cemeteries, so that should be, I think, a problem.
Do you have to be Jewish to be buried in an IDF, like at Herzl or anything like that?
No, there wasn't actually an issue that they had like a different plot for non-Jews, and they had like a big space between the plots, and then I think they changed it because they said this in and of itself, they could fight together, why cannot they be buried together? So no, they are buried also in a military cemetery. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving along. I kind of want to ask my question, because I'm going to ask my question. I'm going to jump in. I apologize for the other good questions that are in the chat. It looks like we'll definitely have time. And of course, now I'm blanking on my question. Here it is. So you're fighting against a lot of like old world problems, right? And it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, we've received we've worked towards women's rights. Like it's like 100 years too late, right, to really feel the strength and the power of those wins. So what is the metric for success, right? When the Iraq feels like they've really achieved something, what's the metric of success?
So I think the success is, first of all, to identify a problem, give it a name. We're saying that when you fight an injustice, there is a process of naming, blaming, and claiming, right? So first of all, you give it a name. So we identified you gave the example of women's rights. We identified the problem of exclusion of women, of gender segregation on the public sphere, and we gave it a name. We gave it a name in Hebrew. It's called Hadarat Nashim, exclusion of women. When we filed the first petition on the issue of bus segregation on the buses, people in Israel could not understand it. They said, listen, you have to be people, this community, they want to keep, modesty rules. You have to let them live their lives. And people all around the world were astonished that there are buses in Israel where women should board from the back door, and people in Israel couldn't understand it. And over the years, we've seen such an amazing progress in the public understanding that, first of all, that this is a problem, and that now it makes news. Now it's such big headlines, any issue regarding exclusion of women and women's rights. So I think that it's a success in the way that, first of all, we educated the public. We made people understand that you cannot accept it, that this is illegal, and they should fight against it. And of course, also change the minds of the decision makers. Okay, the Attorney General now understands it's illegal. The courts accept our petitions. So when we look back, 10 years ago, we see such an amazing progress that things that back then seemed normal, and what can you do? That's life, or not. You have to question things that you can't say, okay, that's the way they live, and there's nothing to do. So I think this was a very important progress, and we're trying to do the same, of course, on the issue of freedom of religion, on issues of fighting racism, not accepting the fact that rabbis in formal posts say horrible things against the Arabs and nobody does anything. No, we're not accepting this. We're challenging this, and also trying to make this not a reality, to make it something that will disappear. So I think this is sort of a success.
Yeah. It sounds like there's the legal, obviously it's Iraq, right? So there's the legal avenue, but then also this really interesting idea of just bringing it into public discourse is, can be a part of the success. Just to bring the idea like, oh, people are now talking about this, they wouldn't be otherwise. So
right. I think we're doing it, both through discussions at the Knesset, through the media, through the traditional media, and now, of course, in the last years through social media. And we're putting a lot of effort through social media. If you're, of course, welcome to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I think definitely with the younger generation, but with everyone, it's such an important avenue, because we're doing such an amazing things, and we want people to know that we're doing those things, because we want them to know this is illegal. We want them to know that you can turn to us if you encounter such practices. And so we're trying to make sure to publicize what we're doing, and it's, of course, it has this educational side to it, to change people's mind.
Thank you. Okay, so here's an interesting one. Holy Blossom has a number of people in the arts community. One is Karen Allen, who is a curator of contemporary art, and she's asking a question about women in the arts and if they have state support for female senior artists. I'll leave it there, and maybe some follow-up pieces as well.
Yeah, we don't deal with it directly, but I can definitely say that there is support for female artists. It's not a contemporary art, but my sister is a dancer and a choreographer, and she's supported by the culture ministry, and she was actually supported even in former governments where Miri Regev, who is from the Likud, from Netanyahu's party, was the Minister of Culture. And they support various groups, theater, of course, museums, dancers. So in the sense, I think that they do. I think that most of the problems are actually in female sports. I think there is more discrimination there. And there are some issues like basketball groups for girls or for people from religious cities playing basketball for youth, and they're not willing to play with girls. And we had some cases on this issue. So on the arts, I think we're sort of okay. We have some censorship issues, freedom of expression issues, but I wouldn't say there is big discrimination of female artists.
You don't identify it as like an issue.
No, no.
But in sports, that's an interesting issue. Is it it's a Shomer Nagia problem?
When we the case I said, it was like 10-year-old kids, I mean,
right.
It doesn't make any sense. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to make sure that the religious groups don't play against groups with girls. It's crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a deep breath, right? Yeah. Well, here's a timely one. This is from Arnold Englander. In North America, a lot of attention is now on abortion rights. What is the law in Israel with respect to this issue?
So interestingly enough, it's not an issue in Israel, not until now. Maybe now, the conservative, sectors here will get an idea. Under Israeli law, there is a commission that you can apply for a request to have an abortion, but it's considered like almost automatic. So if a woman says that she has like mental problems and it would be very hard for her to carry on the pregnancy up until week 24, then usually she would get a permission. So she still had to go through this process, but she would usually be granted a permission. And interestingly enough, it's not a religious issue here, which is weird. But up until now, it's been one of them. I mean, now the current health minister who is from Meretz, Nitzan Horowitz, is trying to make it even an easier process, and that's why hopefully it won't be a backlash. But for now, it's sort of works okay, and it's definitely not a big issue like the States, and we're following very worriedly what's going on in the United States now. Yeah, what's the situation in Canada on the issue of abortion rights?
I'm an American citizen. I'm not the right person to ask. I've been doing my research, but it makes perfect sense to me that the decision would be made from the Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's a health issue.
Right.
So that's not doesn't seem to be the case in the States. I could wax poetic and get on my soapbox, so I won't comment on it. But it's scary. It's scary.
It is.
Perhaps Arnold Englander is the person who asked the question. Well, you know what? I want to steer us in a different direction. But it's worth looking into. So another question is, how large is the Iraq team? And it says your list of issues is so lengthy and vital, but perhaps we'll start with the first one. Is the question: how big is the team?
So Iraq consists of around 20 workers. We have a legal department, a legal aid center for Olim. We have a resource development department, and we have a lobbyist in the Knesset. We have a public policy director and a spokesperson. So that's about it. So yeah, we don't have a lot of people. We have a very heavy workload. We always wait for things to get maybe, a little not as tense as they are, but it never occurs. And of course, now the political situation is very unstable. So we're starting to work with the current government, starting processes, which take time. And I don't know if we'll be able to continue because, the government could fall in like a month, nobody knows. It's so uncertain. So we're, working in very uncertain conditions, but we're trying to do the best that we can.
Very interesting. Okay, I want to just make sure I didn't miss any questions in the chat, and again, please feel free to continue sending them in. I think so. Okay, So I think that's everything in the chat. So I've always got questions for you. Orly. It's super nice to meet you, and maybe worth noting publicly that about 6 years ago, Rabbi Splansky took a social action trip to Israel from Holy Blossom. And on that trip, the Iraq was like the partner. And there was a trip to Beit Shemesh to help understand this illegal, the unethical ways in which some ultra-Orthodox are trying to erase women and girls from public sphere, right? So Holy Blossom has for a long time been connected to the good work of Iraq, and we hope to do more trips and more learning with you in future.
Now that COVID is dying down, hopefully we will be very happy to have you again and take you on tours.
Okay, there's some more questions pouring in here. Thank you. Arnold is just commenting about our previous. So there is no law prohibiting abortion, and therefore it is legal. Karen Allen asks, are there opportunities for Canadian specialists to work on some of these issues in conjunction with Iraq? I'll add, like, how can we, outside of this campaign that you're running, how can we be supportive, either with checkbooks or otherwise?
So yeah, like Canadian specialists working on our issues, in some cases we might need like a comparative, view, but usually there is not a possibility for direct work. However, as I said, first of all, get to know our struggles through our newsletter, through our Facebook page. Let your friends and family know about us. And of course, invite us. We are very happy to give talks now on Zoom. It's really opens up so many new opportunities. Of course, when you're in Israel, contact us, and you're most welcome to support us too, because the donations allow us to continue to do all this important work.
So you've been with Iraq for some 18 years now.
Yeah.
And only in the role as director for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So maybe you can, and you can say, Rabbi, it's too personal. Maybe you could comment on the work that you did previously and now the kind of role that you are in this leadership position.
Yeah, so I focused on legal work for the first 17 and a half years, leading most of the struggles that I talked about today. And as director of Iraq, I'm trying to develop the public advocacy arm. We have a public department, but we have to make it a bigger and stronger. And the fact that we had a new government that we could finally work with after many years of having a very hostile government made it very clear that we have to concentrate on our advocacy work. And as I said, we started meeting with the government ministries. We had many meetings at the Knesset. We met with the prime minister, we met with different ministers. So we had a series of meetings and really trying to build a relationship and to promote different issues, fighting for women's rights, fighting racial profiling, fighting segregation of men and women on cemeteries, helping new immigrants. So we had a series of things, and it was it's my focus, my main focus now to strengthen the public advocacy department and also to focus on the issue of the social media. This is also something that we're working very intensively on, and that's about it. And of course, I'm part of the legal struggles, but it's very hard for me to take the back seat when we're talking about going to the Supreme Court, because I've been doing it for 17 years. But it's so I'm there, but I'm sort of switching roles now to the back seat.
Very good. So you would have seen a few weeks ago, we had a conversation with Anat Hoffman, who is deeply connected to Iraq and now Women of the Wall. Can you comment on the connection between Iraq and Women of the Wall?
Sure. So first of all, Anat is the major connection because she's executive director of Iraq and she's the chairperson of Women of the Wall. But Iraq has been representing Women of the Wall for many years, both in legal petitions and legal lawsuits. And also I've been accompanying Women of the World prayers since 2016. I don't know how Anat has been doing it for over 30 years. It's such a difficult experience. I mean, it's so important, but it's emotionally very, very difficult, because each month we see, groups of girls in the women's section and also boys in the upper section, with such hostility and hate that it's really very hard to encounter each month. So I've been representing them in court and joining them to be part of the prayers myself. So we have a very close cooperation between the organizations, and of course fighting for the implementation of the Western Wall Agreement together with the conservative movement is something that we're doing, hand in hand, since before 2016, and of course now calling on the government to implement the Western Wall Agreement is something that we've been collaborating on for all this time.
Well, I think this is all the questions I'm seeing for now, and so I want to thank you, Orly, on behalf of the whole Holy Blossom community, our guests, and the Reform world, and truly the Jewish people. The work that you're doing is not just for the Reform world, but bettering Israeli society, which is so crucial. So thank you for your good work. We wish you a b'hatzlacha in this new-ish. I think we were joking before the webinar began. You've been in the position 6 months now and have already made big changes, but in an 18-year career with Iraq, 6 months we can still say you're new in this role.
That's true.
And so we wish you b'hatzlacha. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this sacred work that you're doing on behalf of our movement and our people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Orly, we'll leave you with the final words and closing words.
Yeah, so I can tell you that it really, the support of people both in Israel and abroad, I mean, your warm words really helps us and gives us energy to continue, because we really believe that we are fighting not only for, Israelis, but for Jews all around the world who really care about Israel and want to make Israel, Orly Goyim, a light upon nations. So we'll continue to do it. And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you this evening.
Thank you, Orly. I see many hand claps, and so really the warmth of our community is with you, and thank you for being with us.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Take care. We're going to join together next week for our final session. Same time, same place, same link, and hopefully we'll send this recording link around together with a few links to donate, to sign up for the newsletter and the like. So thank you, everyone, especially for your time, for joining us and taking the time to be with us too.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Can we get you